All right, so we're just getting there now, right? So now we know how to serve static content. We know how to create a get server. All right, let's tackle how we implement a post server now. All right, so basically a post server is going to be very similar to a get server. So remember, the gets are generally requests where the request is all in the URL. So the resource that's requesting or the query parameters are part of the URL itself. Much more secure is to send it with a post, in which case our data is a part of the uh, request body. All right. So in this case, then it makes sense that we'll need to, once we receive the response, we'll need to somehow parse it to get the data out of the body of the request message. And then this whole process that we did before takes off again. All right, so let's take a look at an implementation real quick. All right, so here we go importing good old HTTP, and here is our code to create our server. All right, so we've seen it a couple times now. Which port are we listening on? That's right, we're listening on 8080 right here. All right, here's our callback methods for what we want the server to do when it gets the request. All right, so in this case, we have an empty string called JSON data. All right, so now we need to listen for the data coming in from the request. All right, so request.on data, remember our events. All right, so on the data event, let's take the chunk and let's append it to our JSON data string. All right, so this is just taking the data from the request and appending it to our JSON data string. So we're listening for the data event. All right. Then when the data is exhausted, we're listening for the end event. What are we doing? We're going to parse our JSON data now back into an object. All right. Then we're going to create a response object here, which we're using an object literal. We're setting the message property to hello, request object.name, and question, are you good, to request object.occupation. Again, these are going to be written to the um, request object's body. All right. We're going to write our head 200. Then we're going to stringify our response object and send it back to the client. All right. So let's take a look at what code would be on the client side. All right. So on the client application, we're going to require HTTP. All right. Then we're going to create our options. What are our options? Well, our host is going to be localhost, right? 127.0.0.1. You're seeing it a different way here. The root directory, port 8080, and we're sending a post this time. All right. Now, here's we're going to skip the callback method real quick. All right, so here's our request actually. So we're constructing our request. We're passing our options, and here's our uh, response that we're listening, our handler for our response, which is this, which we'll look at momentarily. All right. Now we're using the write on our request. All right. So here's our request.write. We're going to write an array or object literal with the properties name, Bilbo, occupation, burglar. Remember we talked about how we're going to read those properties out? That's why we parsed, because we sent JSON data, so we need to parse that JSON object back. All right. Now, let's look at our code to read the response. All right. So we're going to get in the response. On the data, we're just going to append each chunk to our string. All right. And then when it ends, we're going to parse it back to JSON, and we're going to log what the server sent back in response to our console. All right. So if we execute it, notice I'm putting everything all in one, so it's going to all execute at one time. HCP server underscore post. All right, and there's the server sending back our response. Remember, it said hello and question and appended everything to it. All right, so that is implementing a post server in Node.js. Very simple. Take care.